2019, around 47 million flights were counted in global air traffic. There is no question that these people had a lot of luggage with them, but it is not always just underwear, pants, and shirts that are in the suitcases. Sometimes passengers smuggle the most impossible things on board, and the most disgusting things we want to present you today, as we show you 8 shocking things that were found at airports. Not only are there disgusting creepy crawlies and dangerous predators, we'll also tell you which item triggered an evacuation. It's going to be very exciting, so stay tuned here at Wonderlane. Number 8. Let's start with a story that will probably make people with arachnophobia's hair stand on end. Because in 2012, customs officials at Amsterdam International Airport were routinely examining the luggage of a German vacationing couple who had just arrived from Peru. But while other vacationers tend to buy beautiful jewelry as souvenirs or collect stones on the beach, Dutch customs found other vacation souvenirs in the couple's suitcase, namely over 200 live tarantulas. In addition, the officials also found centipedes, crickets, and various beetles between socks, sweaters, and towels. Some of the spiders were extremely rare, and the couple stated that they had collected the animals themselves in the wild. An investigation was immediately launched, and the animals were handed over to the relevant authorities for further investigation. Number 7. Let's continue with an extremely curious incident that was not quite as dramatic, but must have been extremely embarrassing for everyone involved. At the airport in Athens in 2003, a 40-year-old British woman triggered the security alarm. The lady was on her way back to England with a friend when the metal detector kept going off. The vacationer was extremely nervous and looked for excuses. In addition, she initially refused to be strip searched. Only when she was threatened with the police, she went with the customs officers into the next room and undressed. What the police found was probably the most bizarre thing they had ever seen. The woman was wearing a so-called chastity belt. The woman told the officers that her husband had forced her to put on the medieval device. He allegedly wanted to prevent his wife from becoming unfaithful and having extramarital contacts with the foreign Greeks. She also credibly asserted that she had no key to remove the curious belt. In order for her to continue her journey anyway, the pilot first had to give his consent. Finally, the woman sat relieved on the plane to London, but the day must have remained in her memory for a long time. Number 6. For the man on our number 6, his curious smuggling attempt also had an extremely unpleasant end. At Sydney Airport, a traveler from Australia aroused the curiosity of customs officials. The man had previously been in Dubai, but during the baggage check in 2009, the officials made a strange discovery. Namely, the 23-year-old hid 2 birds' eggs in the packaging of a vitamin preparation. During questioning, however, the man behaved extremely suspiciously, and the customs officers insisted on a body search. In the process, they made a shocking discovery. The young Australian was not traveling alone. Instead, he had attached 2 pigeons to his lower legs and wanted to smuggle them into the country under his jeans. Australia has particularly strict quarantine regulations for the introduction of plants and animals to protect the continent's health, agriculture, and environment. Penalties for animal smuggling can be up to 10 years in prison and 110,000 Australian dollars. However, the man is in good company with his bird smuggling. Indeed, in the same year, customs officials at the Los Angeles airport also pulled a man out of circulation. The man, named Duck Lee, smuggled 14 live songbirds under his pants from Vietnam to the USA. Duck Lee also had the rare birds attached to his legs, and he had a plan to sell the feathered animals in the US. The plan failed, and the man had to go to prison for 5 years. Number 5. We stay with animals and a tragic smuggling attempt that left the world speechless. Although customs officials at major international airports have seen their fair share of smuggling, none of them have ever found a live tiger in their luggage before. But the customs officers made just such a find at Bangkok Airport in 2010. At that time, a young Thai woman wanted to fly to Iran, but the airport staff somehow found the bag suspicious. When screening the bag, the security guards couldn't believe their eyes and initially suspected a domestic cat. It was only when they had the bag opened by wildlife experts that they discovered that the small suitcase contained an approximately 8-week-old tiger cub. The animal had previously been given a strong sleeping pill and was hidden among various cuddly toys. Where exactly the woman with the tiger planned to go, she did not say. However, the trade with tigers or tiger products is strictly forbidden worldwide by the Washington Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species. No wonder, because the tiger is on the red list of endangered species. The Thai woman was finally arrested, and the little tiger cub was brought to a rescue center. Number 4. A bizarre moment occurred at Atlanta's US airport in 2016, when a mummy had to go through security. The mummy, which was transported in a wheelchair, created a terrifying sight at first glance. It was wrapped in brown and partly bloody clothes, had hardly any hair left on its head, and its face was distorted into a creepy grimace. To make matters worse, the body was also being put through the X-ray machine. What was probably a particularly gruesome sight for some passengers, however, at second glance it wasn't half as bad. The mummy was a prop from the 2003 horror film Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and had been part of a convention in Arizona and was now traveling home with its owner. Despite the creepy sight, the customs officials did not miss the opportunity to take souvenir photos and share the selfies on social media. Number 3. In the case of the find that was discovered at the provincial airport in Canada in 2010, it is not at all certain what the owner received more trouble for the actual find or for the stuff he wanted to transport in it. Because in October 2010, a young Canadian initially caused an explosives alarm and the entire airport had to be temporarily closed. But what had happened? During the security check, the officers noticed 2 men who were behaving conspicuously and sweating profusely. On closer inspection, it became apparent that they had probably consumed various substances. But that was not the end of the story, because while the men were undergoing tests, the officers suddenly discovered a grenade in their luggage. The explosives disposal unit had to be called in, the airport was closed, and the passengers evacuated. While panic slowly broke out among the passengers, the explosive experts gave the all clear. The grenade turned out to be a harmless dummy. The contents, however, were anything but harmless, as the 2 men were trying to smuggle several grams of weed across the border in it. The 2 men were arrested, and air traffic could only continue smoothly 3 hours after the incident. Number 2. In 2018, the head of security at the airport in Dubai also made a shocking discovery when she was called to the airport's check-in area by her staff. The officers discovered strange items in a woman's hand luggage on X-ray. Upon closer inspection, they then realized that the lady's suitcases were alive, and inside were several snakes, as well as snake eggs. But, as if that were not shocking enough, the security chief made another very tragic discovery a short time later. The lady with the snakes had checked in even more luggage, and now the officers responsible for the cargo also came forward. They had heard noises from several suitcases and opened them. The find brought tears to their eyes of the experienced boss, because in the other suitcases of the passenger were several monkeys and half a dozen kittens. The animals were totally frightened and were apparently meant to serve as food for the snakes. The security chief immediately informed the police, and the smuggler was arrested. The animals were handed over to a foster home. Number 1. Finally, we come to a case that really leaves you speechless. In Liverpool, 2 German women did not want to smuggle an animal or dangerous substances to Berlin. Instead, they allegedly tried to to smuggle their deceased husband and father onto a low-cost airplane and thereby bring him to Germany. To do so, they had even put the aged 91-year-old pensioner in a wheelchair and masked him with sunglasses. What sounds like a Hollywood movie is actually true and happened exactly the same way in 2010. At that time, however, the officers became aware of the trio and took a closer look at the man in the wheelchair. The shock was, of course, huge when they realized that the pensioner was no longer alive, and the woman were promptly arrested. Although the widow and stepdaughter claim to this day that the 91-year-old was still alive when they put him in the wheelchair, the British police saw things differently. There was a suspicion that the woman wanted to avoid paying the repatriation fee. This fee can be as high as $3,800. But because it could no longer be conclusively clarified at what time the pensioner really died, the woman got off scot-free. That's it for our video. Feel free to write us in the comments which finding shocked you the most. Otherwise, like this video if you enjoyed it, and see you next time here at Wonderlane.